Hey, everybody, this is Caroline with the Expat Interviews Thriving Abroad, where we go all over this big, huge globe to find the most amazing and awesome people that are doing amazing and awesome things in the expat world, in the travel realm. And I'm so excited to be in the company of this young lady who is just going to dazzle you with the things that she has been doing. Thank you so much, Diedre. It's so nice to talk with you. So I am especially excited because you are one of my peeps. You're urgent. You're originally from Jam Down,
Exactly, from the rock,
from the one out of many people, Jamaica. And so I was especially excited to talk with you besides that, because you're doing you've been an expat, you've traveled. I want us to get into that, but yeah. You're doing you have created a really cool niche, I guess, in the travel industry. So we're going to talk about that too. But first, I want you to tell me a little bit about, your exploration into the expat world. How did it start for you?
Okay, so hi, Caroline. Thanks for having me. I am Diedre McLeod, and I mainly run my blog, Diedre in Wonderland. That's Wonderland with an A, because I'm a traveler. I'm a travel writer. I'm a business strategist, and I'm a solo travel coach. And my whole aim right now is to help women, especially Caribbean women, to solo travel the world fearlessly. That's my goal. I have been an expat. I've done expat life for like maybe about 7 years. And so I've worked on 3 continents. So I've worked in Europe, in France, I worked in India, and I've also worked in Colombia. And of course, I've worked in Jamaica. I've also traveled to other places, over a dozen places so far. Really, how did I start? To answer your question, how did I start with expat life? For me, I was quite bored with my job after university in Jamaica. I didn't find it challenging enough. It was corporate, but I didn't find it challenging. I didn't find it impactful. Like I lost the meaning of, like the bigger purpose of what my job was supposed to be. And so I think I basically just fell out of love with my job. And I've always wanted to travel. It's just been one of, this ongoing dream or, this attraction to travel. And so I was like, you know what? Let's move. So I just moved to France, and I moved to France as an expat. I started teaching English in France. And then from there, I did my master's, and I also worked in corporate France as well. So I have an interesting experience of working in the public sector in France, being a student in France, and also working in the corporate sector in France. And then, I was like, oh, slow travel and expat life it's my jam, it's my thing. And so, I moved to India in a little bit to work, to do an internship actually. And also ended up in Colombia after my whole stint in France ended. But yeah, that's sort of how I got into traveling and into being an expat, was just me falling out of love with my corporate job in Jamaica and losing that sense of purpose in my job, and just deciding that, I've always wanted to travel in a more meaningful long-term way. So let's just do it. Like, what do you have to lose, So I did, and I moved to France.
Yeah, that just sounds like a dream come true. And there are a lot of us, a lot of us out in the expat world, or just the travelers, not necessarily even expats, that have, you know, woke up one day and made the decision and said, you know what, I'm just tired of this life and I want to do a reset and start a new life. But sometimes I think we make it a little bit easier. We make it seem a little bit easier than it is. I mean, it is easy, but there are some negatives about doing it, some drawbacks maybe. Now, you don't have children?
No, I don't. So
yeah,
that does one step of one layer.
Yeah, so that makes it a little bit easier when you don't have children. It's just you and your luggage. So so you've been to, what is, you know, one of the most favorite countries that you have visited so far in your adventures?
Okay, so my favorite country as a sort of like tourist traveler is Iceland. Oh my God. Iceland is like a dreamy wonderland. It's so clean. It's so like, I really love that each of the landscape is just changing. Like you will, when you're driving around the country, like every 45 minutes or so, the landscape will just completely change. And so I went in October, so it was just the beginning of fall. And, you know, they already had some bit of snow in other places, but you'd be driving and then it'd be raining. And then you'd be driving again, and then you'd go into sort of like Icelandic forest bush area. And then you're driving again, and then it's snowing. And then you're driving again, and then you're at the beach, you know? And so for me, it was just so amazing. It was just so, it's just gorgeous. I don't know. Iceland is my favorite country, but my favorite city is Barcelona.
Spain. Okay. Do you speak Spanish?
So far. I do speak some Spanish, especially because I worked in Colombia for a while. I've forgotten most of it in terms of speaking, but in terms of like understanding and reading, I'm fine. But I am fluent in French.
Wow. Well, I've said this on another a past video about education in Jamaica, and that is one thing that I'm really super proud about, is that languages are taught at a very early age there. And not everyone, but most Jamaicans, you know, can dibble and dabble in another language. So that's amazing that you've taken on the French language. You mentioned, you know, that you are, one of your passions is helping Caribbean women, you know, get out into the travel space. As a Caribbean woman, you know, sometimes your passport, depending on the country that you're from, does not allow you the ability to go to many countries. How do you overcome that?
Visas. You just apply, man. You just apply for visas. Yeah. Especially for Jamaicans, don't have as much flexibility as other Caribbean islands, as some others. But I think it's just the I want to say yes, there's usually a concern for visas. But I will say, for example, from the position of an expat, there is a sort of level playing field to a certain extent. Like most countries, even if as a traveler they have visa-free entry, in order to find a job, you do have to start and you do have to apply and find a permit, right? And you have to get a work permit. It's sort of level in the sense that things that make it beneficial, like for example, if you're an American or something like that, then they might have like bilateral agreements or they might have specific programs, but it levels it in a sense that everybody has to apply for a work permit. They can't just like show up and go there. So I want to like point that out. Like there is some sort of, for me, like relief, like, oh, okay, I'm not like again at a disadvantage. I have to like apply for a visa. Like everybody has to apply for a visa. But yes, in terms of like traveling to many countries, more popular countries, Jamaicans and other Caribbean people, nationalities do need visas. But Jamaica, for speaking Jamaica specifically, we are able to go visa free to about 80, like between 70 to 80 countries. And some of them are, you know, Singapore is visa free, South Africa is visa free, Russia is visa free, Brazil is visa free for Jamaicans. You know, some of them are, you know, yeah, it's not France or the US, you know, but all of the countries that I just listed are super great.
Yeah.
And if you want to,
I'm sorry, I was going to say in countries that wouldn't be so bad to visit if you know, just wanted to get out and explore in the beginning.
Visa free. I lived in Colombia for a year. Mexico is visa free. You know, there are many countries that if you want to travel, you know, slow travel, which is you know, like a month to 3 months, if you have that flexibility, then you have 70 to 80 countries to play with as a Jamaican. And other Caribbean islands have even more countries to play with in terms of traveling. And then, like I said, if you want to be an expat, you have to apply for a work visa. You have to apply for a job just like everybody else. And that levels the playing field a little bit.
You can come to Mexico also from Jamaica, visa free?
Yeah.
Okay.
What makes it a little tricky is because the US is such a hub for international travel and airlines, it does make it slightly trickier if you don't have a US travel visa. Because your connecting flight often goes through the US.
Yep.
That's like the only sort of like layer that you need, hurdle that you would probably need to like cross. But there are always different ways to get, like traveling to South America, there are lots of routes that you can take. You can go through Turks and Caicos, you can go through Mexico. There are lots of ways that you can do it. From Jamaica, we also have direct flights to Europe. So there are direct flights to Germany, to Paris, and they're also relatively cheap as well. Like if you can afford a plane fare to New York, for example, you can afford one to Europe. So like there are ways around it, but yes, it does present some hurdle because so many connecting flights and flight options tend to go through the US from the Caribbean. So if you don't have a US travel visa, then it makes it slightly more challenging, but it's not insurmountable, or it's not anything that's going to be like, oh no, I don't have a US visa, so I can't travel. Absolutely nothing like that. There are so many other options.
Would you say, or are you finding in you know, your business coaching that a lot of Caribbean women are feeling, well, or I should say in 2021, I mean, what is the perception of travel now for women? Is it, yeah, you know, I can't wait to do it, or is there a lot of apprehension about getting out and travel?
In 2021 now, they're more cautious. They're definitely a lot more apprehension. I think it was already sort of like overwhelming, or it was already sort of like a point of concern in terms of Caribbean women tend to have concerns about visas. You know, for me, I think it's bigger in their imaginations than it actually is in reality, but they're always concerned about visas. Like, can I actually go there? Or do they think the visa process is going to be really complicated, which it's not. So adding to that, and then Caribbean women or Caribbean people in general, even though we have like we have like a migrant culture. Yes, like there are many people who migrate, but it's sort of like a conundrum for me. Like we are accustomed to people migrating. However, we're also like very concerned about migrating to places where there aren't Caribbean people. Even though you can find a Jamaican in every country, right? It's this weird thing that happens. And so they're concerned about, you know, like, will I be by myself? Can I find like another Jamaican place? Which, you know, in my coaching, I tend to like ask, like try to shift their perspective in, well, are you going to, for example, France to experience Jamaica in France, or are you going to experience France in France? Because why are you searching for Jamaican-ness in France? Like, aren't you there to explore France? I mean, it's totally valid and fine for you to miss, aspects of your culture. Like, this is normal, but why are you going? So is this actually a concern that you should be having? Or is this just some sort of like attachment to nostalgia that you're, putting onto your travel? So when I ask that question, it's sort of like when I reframe it like that, then, they will shift and be like, you know what? I'm actually trying to discover new cultures. So maybe I can like relax a little and not be too concerned about, whether my culture is going to show up in this new country. But for 2021, there is, in terms of the fact that we're in the pandemic and travel rules have changed and are constantly evolving and changing right now. So they're a lot more, like focused on let's watch and see what happens. But one thing that happens though is that they're more open to traveling visa-free. Like now they're just trying to travel. Like they're no longer trying to go to, the popular places. Like they're not trying to go to France, they're not trying to go to the US. They're like, okay, but can I go to Mexico? Can I, like where's open? Can I go to, they're now searching for other places. So I think it comes with pros and cons, right? They're more apprehensive right now in 2021 as Caribbean women because travel rules and travel borders keep evolving and changing. But they've also it has also widened their perspective on what travel can be, and so they're also looking for other places that they wouldn't have chosen as their first choice before the pandemic.
You also do you have like a little niche that I find to be interesting that many women are probably, especially Caribbean women, I think would be interested in curvy travel. And you're a grammer and you have some amazing photos of you in all these exotic locations and just, enjoying the views and your body and just feeling free. And tell me a little bit about that. How did you come up with just deciding to focus on that?
You know what? The funny thing is, at first I was shying away from it, not because I'm like afraid of my body or shy about that or have some sort of shame. I'm actually one of the few curvy women that I know in my space who are not like totally hung up about their bodies. So I'm pretty fine. Like I'll just walk around in a bathing suit. I'll do all of those things. I'm pretty adventurous. Like I don't like have these super concerns about my body, which many other curvy women that I know or observe, etc., tend to have, and it's understandable because of society's definition of what fat, being fat is, or or obsession with or bodies with women's bodies, or appearing a certain way. It's normal, but I've never really been caught up in that. And so for me, initially I wanted my fat activism to be about just normalizing being fat, being plus size, without actually like saying it, like just showing, because that's who I am. I'm just an adventurous person who happens to be fat, who happens to be plus size, so I would just share it like that. However, I realized that a lot of my followers, a lot of Caribbean women, they would ask me, where would I find my swimsuits, or how are you so brave? They would use words like brave to like go on this waterfall chasing adventure or whatever. And I realized that I needed to talk about it actually. Like I actually needed to say it out loud that I am a curvy traveler. And it's also not something that you see in the space. Very often, there is not a lot of curvy representation. And so I was like, you know what? Let me be one of that. It's not gonna take over my feed. It's not gonna take over my message, but I should acknowledge that I am a curvy traveler, and I happen to be one who is quite adventurous, and I am able to show women, you know, when they search for other Caribbean women who are curvy, they're searching online, right? But they're not going to see me if I'm just thinking about, oh, I'm just normalizing this by not talking about it. I'm not going to show up. So I just decided, you know, I also needed to show up to show that you can be curvy and adventurous. You can be curvy and fun. You can be curvy and just neutral about your body and not care. You can be curvy and be a solo traveler and, you know, find beauty in the world, in yourself, and on your travels. So that's really a long-winded way, but that's really why I chose to go down that niche.
I love it. I love it. And your photos, we're going to put a link below to your gram. Absolutely amazing photos. I love your spirit. And, you know, hopefully you will inspire others. This is a strange question, but are there any disadvantages to being a curvy traveler? I mean, have you come across any? Do people look at you differently? Do they act differently? Do they treat you differently? I mean, what are there any disadvantages?
Yes. You sometimes you get like backhanded compliments. So, or you get like, maybe I'll get like a surprise. You know, those, oh, you're so adventurous I wouldn't expect that you'd be adventurous. And you're like, really, why? Why wouldn't you expect that I would be adventurous? You know, or, so those sorts of backhanded compliments happen. I do think, though, that because I am not overly conscious about or overly concerned about my body, I just show up like I belong here. Like I just show up for adventure. And so I don't really get into these conversations, or I think also because I don't care about these things, then I'm not going to go around noticing. I think it's like a chicken and egg situation, right? So yes, you do get sometimes these sort of like backhanded compliments. But I think also if you're like a curvy person and you are concerned, which it's valid and it's understandable, if you are like shy about showing up as a curvy person in a space, then you also attract some of these looks or some of these interactions, because you also sometimes end up perpetuating these things, you know,
or your confidence then, how confident you feel in your skin.
Yeah. So instead of like, so for example, I've traveled with other curvy women, and we would go on a hike, and I would just be ready to jump out of, you know, the car or the bus to be like, yeah, all right, let's go. And so they're like, okay, Diedre, let's go. But then I would observe another curvy person would be hesitant. And then so they would have and so they would now get the question of, are you sure it's gonna be okay? You know, but nobody asked me that because I was just ready to go.
Right.
For me, it's a little bit tricky. So those things do exist as a curvy traveler. It's also sometimes uncomfortable in terms of like chairs with armrests. I am actually like a little bit, sometimes I do like a double take to make sure that I can fit in a chair and I won't be like squished. That's just one thing. And you're just never going to find clothes that fit you. You just have to ask those questions or bring your own. So that's what I do. And I will, if I'm, like I said, I do like adventures and stuff. So if we're doing anything that requires like harnesses or stuff, I make sure to double check the weight limit, because sometimes my non-plus size travelers would overlook it because that's not something that they have to think about. But I wouldn't say that. I think it's like you said, if you have like a sort of confidence of, you know, I belong here, then you tend to get less. People will just be like, oh, okay, she belongs here. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say it doesn't exist. I'm fortunate enough that I don't get a lot of it. But I do think it's also because I just decide that I belong. So whatever.
Right. Of course, of course. So to wrap everything up, what would you say? What would some girl to girl, curvy girl, Caribbean woman to woman, woman to woman advice would you give to someone who is contemplating maybe a move abroad or just doing slow travel, just rediscovering life, going to a new place? What advice would you give them?
I think my advice is whatever is in your head is not as serious as whatever is in your head. Whatever thoughts or challenges or concerns you might have, it's mostly in your head. If you want to slow travel, I would say do your research. Get some skills that are, if you're seriously considering to slow travel, or then research remote jobs. Like maybe start practicing in finding remote jobs. How are you going to be able to live abroad? Like get some of those skills, because job hunting is difficult. So if you have skills that are remote work friendly, then it makes it a lot easier. And I would say, just do it. Like, even if you have kids, there are ways you can homeschool. Aren't people homeschooling right now? You could homeschool in Mexico if like, sadly, I mean, it's because of the pandemic why many parents are being forced to homeschool, but I'm saying it's 2 years ago, you wouldn't think that you'd be homeschooling, but it's totally possible. It's the same way you can do it when you're abroad. If you have kids, I don't know what to do if you have a partner. You're gonna have to just figure that out with your partner. But for me, just go and do it. Do your research and keep it simple. Like, do not overcomplicate the process. Like, go back to, what do you want? I want to slow travel. All right. And then start from there. Don't add the layers before you even start. Just start from the basic point of what do you want. And each time you get a challenge, you ask yourself again, okay, well, what is your goal? Your goal is to slow travel. So just do that, which goes back to your question earlier when, I mentioned that people would be nostalgic. They'll be concerned about, finding their culture in a new place. And you just take it back. Well, what do you want? Are you trying to find a new culture, or are you trying to find your home in a new country? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? Like, if you just keep going back to your objective, then it simplifies a lot of things and it makes decision making a lot easier, a lot less stressful. And yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Don't worry about visas or anything. You could do it. You could do it.
Where there's a will, there's a way, right? So you also do business coaching, and how can we connect with you if someone wants to connect with travel advice, business coaching, all of the wonderful things that you do? How do we reach you?
So I do have a website, which is diedreinwonderland.com. And it's Wonderland with an A. That's also my Instagram, Diedre in Wonderland. I hang out mainly on Instagram. So if you can send me a DM, you can send me an email. My email is hello@diedreinwonderland.com. So everything is just Diedre in Wonderland, right? I do have travel consultations in terms of whether you want to just plan a solo trip or you want help consultations on moving abroad. Studying abroad. I also studied abroad. You're able to get me on Instagram or on my website.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, Deidre.
Thanks so much,
You
Caroline.
have been just an inspiration, and hopefully, you know, you will inspire some woman out there, women who, you know, who really, really want to do this, and they just need a little nudge, a little push in the right direction. And we all do, I guess, at one point in our lives, need a little motivation. So hopefully, you've brought that to someone today, and thank you so much, and all the best to you, and many blessings to you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks for having me, Caroline.